access abortion in a safe, legal, compassionate environment. So no, I'm not deterred.
And yet, clearly the point of this work, of this kind of violence, clearly the point of terror in these spaces is to deter physicians, to deter the young medical student from going into this work. And so I guess part of what I wonder is, what does it mean to have gone through all the work, all the student loans undoubtedly, to get through medical school, and then be facing this, not in a war zone, but in your own hometowns?
Well, I think that, you know, this is just behavior that's not tolerated in any other type of medical profession. People walking into other kind of clinics don't have to deal with phalanx of protesters and harassment. And I think it's unacceptable in a civil society, and I hope that this is a sign that the tide is turning, and I hope that the public outrage about this domestic terror attack helps drive the dialogue.
Stick with me, Doctor. David, I wanted to ask you about this because, you know, as I've been reading on it, apparently part of the reason this Planned Parenthood was in this space, right, in this kind of mini mall kind of area where there's a UPS and there's a nail shop, and is so that they're not isolated somewhere, so that there is relatively more privacy for their patients who are coming in, as well as presumably they are more protected in this space. And yet, the idea that the Planned Parenthood still may have been a target here.
Right. I mean, the further an abortion clinic can be away from public traffic, the safer they are. If they're on private space as part of a private medical center, the more protected they are. But that goes against what we were talking about before. They shouldn't have to be back away from public space. They should be out there with their Planned Parenthood or Women's Center sign, because abortion should not be stigmatized the way it is. They should feel safe being public about being abortion providers and being an abortion clinic, but they're not because of what happened yesterday.
I can remember, Alexis, my mom, who was working in domestic violence work in the 1970s and 80s, and the shelters for people coming in circumstances of domestic violence were always shielded. It doesn't say shelter for help and emergency outside, because you recognize that there's real danger. And so I look at a moment like this and I go, so do we take the Planned Parenthood sides down? Do we cower? Do we hide behind this? Because courage matters, but then I also worry about the safety of providers.
Well, and we worry about that intensively, right? And our staff are very well trained around security procedures, and I think it's all of the law enforcement officials that I saw commenting on this yesterday talked about how really well trained they were, that there wasn't a larger loss of life or folks who were injured. But I think it's like really the question that we should be building better barricades for women's health centers, is not the right one. Right? We have to be figuring out why women's health is under attack in such an intense way. Cecile talks all the time about how, having grown up in Texas, that, that there are states now that have fewer rights for women than we had just, 50, 60 years ago. And so the idea that we're reverting and creating these very horrible environments for our providers is really a horrible thing. But I agree with what the doctor said, that our the mission-drivenness of our healthcare professionals is so amazing. You feel like you're walking into a movement when you walk into Planned Parenthood, because and across the board, you know that they are there for their patients, no matter what.
Dr. Cosper, did you and your colleagues I presume, like all the rest of us, you have email lists. Like, did you all activate yesterday? Were you talking to each other? What kinds of things were you saying?
I think that we all act out of concern and support for one another, and also the recognition that we're here for our patients. And I think the important thing to remember is that no matter what happened in Colorado Springs yesterday, hundreds of clinics across the country are open today and ready to take care of patients with compassion and with empathy and with that mission focus that we've always had.
And that's kind of the central claim of counterterrorism, right? Is that you stand up the next day and you don't allow the fear to overtake.
Right.
I want to thank you to Dr. Diane Orvoth Cosper in Baltimore. Here in New York, I want to say thank you to Alexis McGill-Johnson and to David S. Cohen. Up next, 2 schools, just 9 blocks